Good evening. I am Nathan Stix, Chair of the Community Activities Commission, calling to order the Newcastle Community Activities Commission meeting of September 11th, 2024. The time is 5:59 p.m. This public meeting is being recorded, broadcast live, and may be viewed later on the city's YouTube channel. Would you please stand? And can we first have a moment of silence? Shall we never forget the events of 9/11? Thank you. And now if you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Amy, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Forsberg. Here. Commissioner Van Atta.
Present.
Commissioner Lee.
Present.
Commissioner D'Souza.
Present.
Commissioner Kretzinger.
Here.
Vice Chair Flash.
Here.
Chair Stix.
Present.
All present and accounted for.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the approval of tonight's agenda as presented? Please show the final agenda approved as presented. And is there any objection to approval of the minutes from August 14th as presented? Okay, if not, please show the minutes approved as presented. And Mayor Clark is here. Are you going to be doing public comment tonight?
If I may.
Please do.
Thank you all. I only came to do this because I wanted to personally come and thank all of you for your efforts over the weekend for the Newcastle Days. Of course, there was a lot more than just the weekend. It was a lot of preparation. And I know Amy did a lot and all of you helped contribute, and I'm really grateful. I was walking around on Saturday and people would come up to me and say, Mayor Clark, really nice job. And I'd say, whoa, time out. See that woman over there in the orange vest? I said, you need to go talk to her. She just tells me what to do, where to go, and what to say, and it's nothing to do with me. And I ran into Mayor Rich Crispo, who was a mayor some time ago, and he mentioned how when he was the mayor, he had to do all of that stuff himself, like a lot of the recruiting and so I'm very grateful because I know I wouldn't have any time to do it. Newcastle Days would be a train wreck if I tried to do it. So thank you, all of you. Appreciate it very much. I wanted to say that in person, and whoever's mayor after me and on in the future will be a beneficiary of have this great CAC team working for the city. So that was my comments. Can't stay tonight, but I wanted to make sure I came in person to thank all of you. Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Okay, are there any commissioner comments and celebrations tonight?
I mean, who wants? I'll take the lead in kicking off to celebrate Amy George for being amazing and helping make Newcastle Days, like, granted, I've only been to a few, but one of the best I've been to so far. So that's one of my celebrations, and to all of us. Thanks. Thanks, Amy.
Anyone else?
I would like to congratulate us as well. I was talking to a neighbor just yesterday at the KCLS library event for librarian Vicki, and she was part of a group that was playing music on stage, and she said when they talked about getting together to do a performance, she said, oh, I remember Newcastle Days. This is going to be easy. There's going to be like maybe 50 or 60 people in the audience, or like in the whole park. This will be great. I can do that easily. And she said, we got there and we got on stage and she said it felt like thousands of people watching. She said, Newcastle Days has sure grown since its early days, and indeed it has. And it was a lot of fun. And congratulations to all of us for the fabulous weather we ordered as well.
Anybody else? Well, I also want to just say, Amy, fantastic job. And as I said in my congratulatory thank you email. It takes a village. And so I know a lot of our commissioners did a lot of work and helped Amy as well on all the planning and execution. So job well done. It was fun. And now we get to think about what we did right, what we can do better, and plan for next year. Okay. With that, we'll go into reports. Amy, events and recreation.
I'll be brief this evening. I would like to thank all of you for your support at Newcastle Days. It was really wonderful to be able to run the event entirely from the stage in a place where I could be focused and easily accessible, but not that easily accessible. There were a lot of people who wanted to say hello, but it was wonderful to be able to be set up at the stage and know that everything else around me had the support to happen. So whether it's the booths getting what they needed, the questions being answered, I really appreciate that all of you were at the tent and out and about in the crowd helping to make that happen. It was really helpful and reassuring to know that I had a team. And then just 2 reminders for you. One is that the town hall meeting is next Thursday night at 7 p.m. at Risden Middle School. The doors will open at 6:30. There will be light refreshments served. And we will have an option for childcare in the gymnasium for those families attending who want to bring school-age children. They're welcome to attend the meeting as well, but they may prefer being in the gym. And the main item on the agenda is an overview of the 2025 budget. And then like the town hall meeting in the spring, the majority of the time will be allotted for question and answer of council and staff. The second reminder is the fall recycling event is happening at Hazelwood Elementary School on Saturday, September 28th. All of the items that are able to be recycled, generally those are the hard to recycle items, are listed on our website and also on our Facebook page under the event for that particular date. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Amy. So committee reports, our community groups. Let's start with Christian.
Unfortunately, I have not had the opportunity to connect with Russ since Newcastle Days, so I will probably have a more robust report next month from the Historical Society. But I know the cemetery is open, and that's part of what people enjoy about Newcastle Days, is coming and getting to learn a little more about the history. So I was happy to see as many people there as we saw. And Chamber of Commerce, they have their 5-chamber breakfast this Friday, and that is in Issaquah. And that is all I have this week.
Thank you. Shally, any updates with the Y?
Yes. The summer movie night was canceled. That was a night it poured down rain. So they did have to cancel it, but they're working with their vendor about rescheduling. And then the Fall Family Festival has been scheduled for Saturday, October 19th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And that is free and open to the community. And that is all they have right now.
Thank you. Allison, Newcastle Trails.
Trails has posted requests for feedback, support, etc. on the promenade proposal related to Lake Bourne Park and along Coal Creek Parkway. Just looking for commentary, etc. from folks involved in trails.
Thank you. Kim, anything at Aegis?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Connie, Library?
Yeah, so as has been mentioned a couple times, wanted to say thank you to Vicki Heck for all the work that she's done for the library, and she will definitely be missed. And then the library still has ongoing events happening regularly throughout the month, so would encourage anyone who's interested to check out the King County Library website for their full list. But the one event that I'll highlight this evening is that on Wednesday, September 25th from 5:45 to 7:15 p.m., there will be chess for all ages. It will be both games and chess instruction for those seeking to learn. They do ask that you register in advance, and there's only a couple spots left as of a few hours ago. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to sign up. And this will also be offered in October, on October 23rd. In case it does fill up, there will be an opportunity next month as well.
Great, thank you. Ed, Arts Council.
Yeah, so I want to start out by also thanking Vicki Heck publicly for all that she's done for our organization and for the library. We certainly have had a great partnership with the Newcastle Library and can't thank her enough for really fostering that. So thank you, Vicki. A couple of events that we have going on or have right now is the art exhibit at the library. We had our opening night celebration. We had about 75 people show up for that, so that was wonderful. There are roughly 30 pieces of art on display at the library with 20 to 25 different artists represented there. So that'll be on display through the end of September, so I would encourage you to go and view the artwork and also vote in our People's Choice Awards. So that's where you can pick the best of the show and put in for to receive a gift prize package for that. And one of the artists gets it, and one of the entry people that enter get that, and it was supported by some of our local businesses. So thank you for that. We had a great time at Newcastle Days. We did beading and dot drawing, and as usual, it was a huge draw. We had lots of kids and lots of adults coming by to participate in that activity. A couple other things that are coming up. We have an introduction to dot painting at the library on September 21st. We have lettering arts, playful marks to creative correspondence event on October 22nd. And we're planning again this year for our Songs of the Season event on October 7th, which is going to be bigger and better this year. Probably more participation from some of the local schools. So last year we had, I think, 5 different schools, and we're expecting at least 1 or 2 more this year. So that's a big draw and a wonderful holiday celebration. That's on December 7th at the Commons from 2 to 4. And just a reminder that the Little Art Gallery is still available out in front of City Hall. So please come by and enjoy the art and leave something, take something, and participate in the arts in Newcastle. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Ed. All right, first thing under general business is our Newcastle Days debrief. Christian and Connie.
I kind of, as we mentioned before, thanks to Amy, I feel like it was really well run, and the preparations ahead of time, I think, set the event up for success quite a bit. We could use this time to kind of share feedback if there's anything that anyone loved that we did that was new or thinks that we should do differently next year. The main thing that I had heard, which I think is a small, easy fix, is that for the porta potties, there were the 2 that kind of blocked the permanent restrooms, and a line would queue in front of those 2, and people weren't aware that just around back there were 7 to 10-ish more. So maybe for next year we could have just a sign that says more in the back. Kind of simple, it would be an easy fix there. But otherwise, anyone else would like to share or brainstorm about?
I'm going to point out, in addition to signs about the restrooms, which we heard about, I think it would be a good idea if the arts and crafts vendors are still in an area such as they were this time, that we include some sort of really evident signage saying more fun this way, something directing people up there. A lot of people were just really walking right past that. And I think they had a little bit less foot, or maybe even a lot less foot traffic than they had hoped for. Yeah, I think just some signage about more things this way or that way, including restrooms, would have been helpful. I'm going to start there, and I have some other things. I forgot my little list, but I've got some other things. Maybe I'll remember them.
So I have a pretty good tick list here. I'm just going to go right down it. And if you want, Amy, we would be happy to, again, create a shared file. If you want to on SharePoint, we could log all these, or however we think it best to share it. I know I always then think of maybe something else a few days later, and we can update that as well. So whatever you guys think, if we want to have a file.
I'm going to throw out there, with events like this that are recurring, I always start a folder for the next year after the end of the event this year, and then put the feedback document in that folder, so you don't have to dig through everything in whatever location from this year in order to find this. So
Great
that's going to
idea.
be, I'm going to throw that out there, and Amy can tell me if that's a good idea or a bad idea.
I mean, this is whatever, I mean, this is your commission, so however works for you, and then I'll access whatever feedback is collected. As much as possible, I mean, I'm here taking notes. Feel this is the time to do it while it's fresh, and it's fresh in your mind as well.
So I'm putting on my to-do list to start a 2025 folder that'll have a document. And yes, we'll can write some of this down, but I encourage everybody to go in and whatever they've said tonight, add to that document.
So the first thing I have is I would love to see, if it's possible, the event booth moved to an area where we actually can see the stage and see all the venue. If we were right next to Jersey Mike's, we would have been able to, but we would also have been in the mud, which would not have been fun for us. So it was just very hard for us to see kind of what was going on around the event. Next year, if we could have copies at the booth to hand out, a lot of people asked like a map of where everything was. They were trying to find specific locations of specific booths, so that'd be great if we had that. A few things that we could have used at the booth were paper towels, extra scissors, because I know at one point the scissors disappeared. 5 to 6 chairs, because at some points we're all there resting, eating, whatever, and some of us had to excuse ourselves to go so someone else could come sit down. So if we had enough chairs in the booth, it would have made it easier for all of us to just to sit and talk. Duct tape would have been helpful. And I think we all saw that we ran out of small and medium shirts for the volunteers very quickly. So I think we could use less XL and XXL and increase the smalls and large. I have a note to increase our water cases to 15 cases of water for next year, because fortunately we were able to get a few more cases towards the end of the event from QSC. I share Allison's thought about some signage, like there's art up there, or the kids area is that away. I think some of those things, car show, just to help people navigate. I think the radios that we use for the commissioners was very effective. It was easy to get a hold of people for the most part. And I think if you all agree, we'll do it again next year, just to keep it simple. I know I've asked this before, and it just may not be possible from an audio standpoint, but sure would be great to have speakers on the south end, because sometimes it was very hard to hear some of the announcements. Amy, when you would get up there like the Lost Child, I think audio may have turned the speakers by the stage up very loud, because we could hear that. But for the most part, when just simple announcements, Lance was making announcements on things, it was very hard to hear. And then I'm not sure what happened with our feedback QR code. You started to tell me, and then I just totally got sidetracked.
Yeah, I honestly did forget until like halfway through the day, but then couldn't find they weren't in any of the boxes. So probably it was just something that we should have thought about Friday night to find those and post them up. But yeah, unfortunately we didn't have the QR code surveys up.
Do we, by chance, have a recap of the summer concerts with feedback that we received?
It's been added to that doc that Ed had created for the Start, Stop, Continue, so there is a
Okay.
tab on there. I just didn't know if printing and bringing it tonight was the right thing to do,
Okay.
but it's up
Yeah.
there.
We could put that on the docket for a future meeting.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that there was a Newcastle Days QR code feedback.
We had just called that one summer events, so it like could have been used for
I see.
anything else. It wasn't necessarily called summer concerts, but yeah, I think we
Okay.
just probably should have talked about that beforehand. Instead, it came up
Mm-hmm.
that day instead of prior, so next year.
Next year.
Or, I don't know if we can add a link in the next newsletter on social media or anything to say, hey, if you went to Newcastle Dates, we'd love to hear from you, if that would be possible.
If someone is willing to put a text announcement together, send me a graphic and get it to me by tomorrow morning, that is possible.
Tomorrow morning at
Before I start
Noon?
work,
before 8 a.m.?
before 8 a.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Connie. Those are all my notes.
I would just like to ask, and I have no idea whether or not this is information either that's available or that we could have access to, but do we get feedback from any of the vendors? And I'm specifically thinking, for the most part, of the food vendors. It seems to me as though it would be nice to know what they think of it all and how successful they were, whether or not they want to be on a list for future events.
I've written it down. I don't know what to do with that right now.
Okay, great, thanks.
The other thing I want to talk about a little bit more, so the location of the arts booths. Last year, if you remember, they were on the tennis courts, and I think that wasn't ideal for the same feedback, lack of foot traffic. People might not have been aware that they were on the tennis courts. So that's what led us to think that the kind of side hill could be a good section. We were calling it Artist Row, or like an artist neighborhood type thing. Do we think it was an improvement? Would that still be a good location if we had signage? Or there was also an idea of could we just kind of mix the artisans in with the other businesses as well? Is there strong preferences one way or the other?
So the feedback that I got was it would be better to mix them in. Yeah, I think they felt isolated up there, even though there was no fence like there was last year, so there was no barrier. It was an extra effort to have to go up there, and they could sense that there was more traffic down on the field.
I received the same feedback from Newcastle Trails. They felt like they were on the sidewalk, but it just wasn't a high traffic area. Most of the traffic's going into the center of the park. So we should look at next year how if we can, implement and get as much into the park itself, which I don't know if physically we have the room to do that, but it would be nice. Because then everybody's just walking up and down and not having to go around the outskirts. The one thing I did hear from the kids' play area was they loved having everything there, the petting zoo, the ponies, the inflatables. It was just nice having that all there. But I think everybody else felt they were kind of in the trees, under the trees, or the art people up on the hill. So,
We'd like to mention that Newcastle Trails and the other local community groups did not pay for their space. Everybody on the main grass paid for their space.
I did hear one complaint about the Wi-Fi, but I only heard one complaint. So I think everybody else, since we didn't hear anything, felt like it was a good experience.
Did anybody get any feedback on our coffee truck? Was it successful?
I hope so, because I like their coffee. I hope so. I really hope so, because when I went up to talk to her and let her know how much I had appreciated them coming to the PSD thing, she said, yeah, we had other things going on today, but we were able to bring one of us or maybe two of us, and the big thing there. So I really hope it was, but I have no idea otherwise. But I might reach out to her. I follow her on something, so I might reach out to her and say, hey, I hope it was a great day for you guys.
I did speak with her. She does better when there's not a shave ice truck next to her. And that's a lesson learned. She also commented that everybody wants an espresso truck at their event, but it's not always a good match for the particular event. She did not do as well as she had hoped she would, but she did have many people asking for her card. And so there's a level of success that she usually doesn't see at other events. Most people don't ask for her card.
Any other thoughts? Kim?
Well, one of the things that I noticed was the attendance at the concert at night was very low, which is just noted. Last year, you know, it was the lawn was full and the beer garden was packed, and this year it was not. So I don't know what to attribute it to, but it's just something to kind of watch. Maybe people were just done at the end of the day.
So I did let Amy know pretty quickly on that the music was super loud. I had feedback from several of my neighbors who actually left to go into the beer garden because they had seats like 30 rows back, but it was just too loud. And so I asked Amy, and we heard the music go down, but I think at that point it was already too late. So one thing I'm going to put on my notes for next year is, I think I've told some of you, we went to Issaquah Salmon Days last year, and their beer garden is twice as big as ours, but it's an L. It's shaped as an L, and they have a tent like we do, and the L is actually seating outside, but it's fenced in. So people can go and they can bring in their own chairs and they can sit, and they would still be off to the side. Do we have the space to do that? But we would be able to, in essence, maybe double the size or increase it by at least 60, 70%. So we could have that many more people. But it was interesting. We just didn't get quite the, and I asked a few people about that. And one of the comments I got was, well, you know, it's an all-day thing and people are they just want to go home. And I thought, but in years past, it's been an all-day thing. What was different? It's hard to tell what was different. I thought the band was fabulous. The beer garden was fun. There were still food trucks serving food. But yeah, it was much lighter.
That's what was interesting. It's like all the variables were the same, and yeah, everything was great, and yet there was no one there to notice. So.
Well, it wasn't like they were leaving for the Husky game, because the Husky game was over. And the weather was actually better at that time, so.
Is it possible that the band last year had a bigger, following? Yeah, because I remember last year people showing up like around that time, like, getting there before the band started, and I didn't see that this time.
Yeah.
I saw a lot more people leaving, so totally separate from the quality of the band, because I agree, I think they were awesome. I just wonder if maybe they didn't have, they weren't as established or something.
That's a good point. I mean, something to think about as far as how do you attract and keep people. It would be the band's likeness, I guess. Shelley?
I thought the car show was, I think, the best one I've ever seen in 10 years.
Yeah, and I would be interested to think about the structure of that, did that work well? Because I know the paid entry fee, like people didn't come until the very last minute. Did it support our desire to get people already registered and cars loaded in faster in the morning by having the,
I don't think I understand the question. We had 85 people pre-registered.
yeah, because
Is that what you're getting at?
yeah, so my
Okay.
wondering was, yes, my wondering was, would that be considered more successful than past years when people were showing up at the last minute to try to pay their entry fee and get in? Yeah.
It was. Typically, we get about a dozen people who pre-register ahead of time, and most people show up same day, which presents a huge logistical challenge for the volunteer coordinators. So, two things. We offered free pre-registration, same day paid, although ultimately we had enough sponsorship that we didn't need to charge people on the day of. But I think more importantly, Lance Lambert helped us with promotion and shared it. So we brought in some new car clubs who had never participated in our show before. So Connor and I discussed in our debrief that we have the potential to expand that. Now we have to also look into the insurance risks of increasing cars that might potentially have greater value. However, there were a number of factors that played into that.
So one thing we might want to just think about, brainstorm, not tonight, but over the next several months, is the whole idea of how do we make it more meaningful for people to come back for the concert. Some other thing that is added, I don't know, I have no idea what that is at this point, but just something so that we don't have to rely on the fact that if it's not a band that attracts a following, they would have a reason to stay or even come back.
One thing that I heard was to advertise it, you advertise Newcastle Days, right, as the big chunk of the day, but also to advertise the concert as its own entity. Because there's definitely a specific audience that if they knew there was a band in a beer garden, they might not be interested in like the community and the family stuff in the morning, but they might come back. They might come just for that.
It's a great idea.
My question was what you had already answered, was how did it work out having the ponies and the bounce house next to each other? Was it, I didn't hear anything. It was good.
It was very good, yeah.
Because you're right, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't really see what was going on.
We could build a structure next year that's about 3 stories high, like a fire tower, and we can see everything.
Yeah, so for our budget for next year, Amy, we're gonna need an eagle's nest and a drone. I'm kidding, I'm joking. That is a joke, let me be very clear. That would be awesome. I don't actually have any realistic expectation of that happening.
Did we have a drone at all going over the venue to give us a ballpark of attendance, anything like that? No. Did we last year? I thought.
I don't think we, I was gonna say, I don't think we did, but somebody posted drone footage, but that might have been a different event.
That was Deb's husband had done.
Oh, right,
drone
yeah.
photos.
Talking about signage and location and stuff too, I don't know how many people came and said, where are the ponies? The ponies are there, but last year they were there. Well, this year they're, some places. So people were, my point being, people were expecting the area behind us to be where the kids' stuff has always been. Just going back again to the signage stuff.
Signage and maps.
I spent most of the morning in the parking lot, so I thought the load-in went well. I'm a little bit crazy, but I would just make sure next year that there's someone actually stationed in the parking lot, because there's a lot of traffic running through, and some people were just dropping off. Some people were dropping off for the event. Other people were literally driving through, or they wanted to go to the park. to play tennis, but, they couldn't on that day. So I would just make sure we have someone stationed actually in the parking lot. So Kim and I handle that for most of the morning.
Did we have a sign up for that?
We had to sign up for the parking lot area, so load in, load out, but I think we just specifically need people stationed actually in the parking lot to answer questions as they come in and directing traffic.
So additional people
Yeah.
in the parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay. And with the radios, were they helpful in getting volunteers, getting people down there, getting maintenance guys down with the trucks to help people? Was that helpful?
I thought it was extremely helpful. Yeah.
Anything else?
I thought the cake was really good. And I'm surprised that we cut the whole thing.
The cake was a happy ending, yes. And I did go to Safeway yesterday, or what is today, Wednesday? Monday. So I went to Safeway Monday, and I thanked both the two people in the bakery department, and just told them the event was fabulous. They loved the cake. It didn't melt. I showed them pictures, and they were very happy. Yeah. I told them how much we appreciated their donation. And I have some action pictures of you guys cutting the cake if you haven't seen those yet.
Oh, same.
Well, Shally's shirt looked the scariest when we took our photo. It wasn't Halloween yet. Christian?
I just would like to say thank you to Safeway, especially those bakers, for their work, and especially considering how well it turned out. And also a big thank you, we should say, to the chamber for sponsoring the beer garden and getting all those volunteers and stuff handled. So I'm throwing that out there. And most of you guys have taken all of my feedback and thoughts. And I know that Amy already knows this one about renting a large diesel generator trailer for the trucks to plug into, but I just want to make sure we put that out there because the fire department did flag that as a potential problem that we could easily mitigate, so that we should budget for that next year, however much the cost is to rent a large diesel generator trailer that they can all plug into so they don't use gas generators and carbon monoxide poison our guests at Newcastle Days.
Good point. Okay. Anything else with Newcastle Days? Okay. So next on our agenda is the Wintry Park renaming proposal. At our August 14th CAC meeting, Mercer Island resident Jake Glasser presented a proposal to the commission that we consider issuing a recommendation to City Council to rename Wintry Park to Hubble Park. Commissioners, I would like to get your thoughts tonight on whether this proposal should be acted on, and do you have any questions before we do that?
Chair Sticks, would you like me to share the staff responses to the question that were asked at the last meeting?
Yes, please, Amy.
So one question that came up for staff at the last meeting was the approximated fiscal impact. And this is based on historical data that Parks and Trails Planner Hutchins went in to take a look at it. So the approximate fiscal impact at minimum would be about $69.50, so just under $7,000. That would include replacing 2 new signs at $3,000 a piece, plus the installation. And then there's approximately 8 bollard signs that would have to be replaced. And that also includes the cost of labor to change that. It does not include any fiscal impacts to digital assets that would have to be updated. So that would require staff time to be able to do. So at minimum, it's approximately just under $7,000. Any questions on that particular piece of information? Yes. That's my understanding. Vice Chair Flash asked if that was a one-time thing, and it's my understanding that it is a one-time thing. The other question that was sent to staff from the meeting was, what are the Wintry Park interior structures? There are numerous ones. Some are better fits for naming after people than others. However, Brendan wanted to make sure he had as thorough a list as possible. So I know we're not naming pet waste stations after anybody, but just so you know, there's 2 of them there. There are 8 benches, 2 park signs, 2 pet waste stations, 4 picnic tables, 1 playground rules sign, 2 recycling bins, 5 trash receptacles, 1 drink fountain, an open air pavilion, and a playground. Any questions on that particular piece of information?
Just that you went so fast, I wasn't able to write them down, but I'll get it later.
Oh, I can read it more slowly. Okay.
Okay, so open discussion.
I'll start. One of my thoughts, and I had this thought without allowing myself to be prejudiced before I'm sorry, what was Jake's?
Glasser?
Mr. Glasser's presentation. One of my thoughts was, we have so many features, or excuse me, we have a fairly limited number of parks, et cetera, public spaces in our city, and we have so many valuable community members over the years, either in Newcastle, currently or previously in Newcastle, that it seems really, seems to me like a big, not a leap, but a big leap to select one person to name a park after. Some of the fiscal costs and that kind of thing, fiscal impact, just kind of solidify it for me, but it just seems like we have a fairly limited number of things to name, to give names to after our valuable community members.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I know Jake's not here tonight, but I do just want to say I really appreciated his engagement and bringing this to us. I think it brought up a lot of interesting conversations and things for us to think about that we probably hadn't thought about before. And I hope he doesn't feel discouraged about the process and stays engaged in local issues, because I think that's really special, especially for young people. So I do want to say that. Secondly, he had mentioned a petition and that he had gotten signatures. Has anyone seen that? Maybe there were a couple of emails from him afterwards. Did we get those signatures?
No.
No? Okay.
I would echo what Connie said about Jake's engagement. It's really nice to see people be engaged, particularly young people, like starting out. And I thought he did an incredible job on his presentation. So I wouldn't want him to be discouraged. But also in line with what Allison said, there's so many people. And it would be a wildly slippery slope to start naming parks after our community members, because this community has the depth of the wealth of community members that we have that contributed in ways that people could argue that they should have a park named after them. The bench is deep. The bench is deep. And so I don't think that's not advisable, not to mention the logistical problems it presents. And then there's budgetary concerns. And I think lastly, are other really meaningful ways to honor him in that same park that don't require renaming the entire park and don't have nearly as much. They have very little impact on the budget, and those are, in my opinion, worth considering.
I agree with what has been said, and I want to thank Jake Glasser for being involved in the community and making the request. But again, with section 4 of our resolution about naming of parks, a name once adopted should be bestowed with the intention that it is to be permanent. And so with that in mind, I favor toward the permanency of the name of Wintry Park without a strong rationale that it should change. And I agree with Commissioner Kritzinger that there are ways that we can honor Mr. Hubble's service to specifically the Wintry community within that park. It sounds like there are a lot of things that could potentially be considered. And even then, I would want to go back to our resolution that says we approach it cautiously with forethought and deliberation. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable making a specific recommendation for even the structures tonight. I would want to know more and dig deeper to understand what the practice of doing something like that might look like. But it's worth considering in my mind.
I agree with Kim before we actually decide on other options to look at that first. I thought, I wasn't here, but I watched the presentation and I thought Jake's presentation was really thoughtful and I thought it was really sweet that he would want to do this for his friend's dad. I thought his presentation was really nice and it was really engaging. I don't think it's practical to rename a park. I would only be for it if the name was suddenly offensive or if it was like a major issue, but in this case I don't feel that way. I like the history. I think the history is more important than the name. So I don't think that the park should be renamed at this time.
Yeah, I think one of the, I agree with pretty much every comment that has been made. I think one of the data points that hasn't been presented here is that we did get some feedback from some of the residents of Wintry, and it was resounding, let's not rename the park. So I want to mention that, and I put some credence in that data point as well, that the people that are going to be using it most regularly and are touching the park on a regular basis, at least a subset of those people in that neighborhood feel like we shouldn't rename it. So, and then going back to section 4, further to Kim's comments, the next sentence says that changes are strongly discouraged. So that's in the documentation as well. So I would kind of lean on that as well in this case. I do agree that potentially there's an opportunity to name something within the park, but certainly not the park name.
And just to add on to what Ed said about all of the public comments or feedback that we received, yeah, it was resoundingly not in favor. And I would also like to note that I received emails from people who I know in the community to not necessarily agree on many things, but they appear to agree on not renaming the park. And that also stood out to me as well, is that the consensus from the community behind this is very strong.
And my opinion, again, thanking Jake for his presentation, which I also thought was very well done. My thought behind this is the policy is pretty clear. I'm not going to reread it again. The cost is expensive to rename the park, and the community input. We resoundingly heard a lot of no's from the Wintry neighborhood itself, and we never did get the results of a petition that were in favor of it. So do you feel like you have enough information now that we could vote whether or not this commission would like to send a proposal to City Council? Okay, so All those against sending this proposal to City Council, say aye.
I,
Aye.
I,
All against? Okay, so we are unanimous. With that being said, the decision of the Community Activities Commission, we will not recommend to City Council that the Wintry Park be renamed. Again, I would personally like to thank Mercer Island resident Jake Glasser for his proposal and his time. We would also like to thank the numerous Newcastle residents that gave us their feedback. We really appreciate that. I would also like to say, if there is anyone out there that would like to suggest and present to the commission an alternative option to recognize Mr. Hubble, to the city, his contributions to the city and to the Wintry Park, e.g. naming and dedicating a structure within the park, we would be open and welcome to hearing that proposal in the future, provided that it includes agreement from Newcastle residents, especially residents living in the Wintry neighborhood, and that would also come with funding, so that there would be no cost to our residents. That funding would be private, and so we would not have to dig into the budgets to help pay for that. Okay. Last thing on our agenda, discussion of the volunteer appreciation event. Amy.
Alrighty. Believe it or not, it is right around the corner. For those commissioners who are new to us, annually, as part of the work plan, the Community Activities Commission recognizes and appreciates the volunteers in the community, not only those who volunteer directly with the city, but those who play an important role in our partnering local organizations. We have a volunteer dinner that for the past few years has been held at Resonate. Good news, bad news. Good news is we have more volunteers than ever. Bad news is we have outgrown Resonate. Additionally, Resonate is expensive. There's a $2,500 minimum buyout, which is the maximum of my budget. So if Resonate had not been outgrown, we would not, I would not feel comfortable booking it at the current cost. So I am looking to the commission to think about alternative suggestions for venues that would be able to host at minimum about 125 people.
Do we, I think we might have information in the Third Spaces file that could help us with that, because we'd started to plug in capacity. And I think weather might be a challenge, because I think the ones that were larger were all outdoors, but this could be a good opportunity for us to use that resource to check.
what's the capacity at Aegis? You may have that number off the top of their head.
Like 100, 110, something like that. So we,
Does the YMCA have any space?
actually, I correct that. It may be less for dinner. That's if it's seated like rows and things. So
I'm wondering if fiscally we have to look at not dinner. Because I'm thinking any space with catering is going to be, with that many people. I've planned a wedding. It costs more than that.
So I guess one question I'd have is, what is our budget for the appreciation event?
$2,500.
It is $2,500, okay. So that gives us something to start with. We have a lot of local restaurants that might be able to cater. If we promote it correctly, they might, help us out.
What is the capacity at Tapatia?
You mean inside the restaurant?
Bigger, but their buyout would be higher, I bet.
yeah.
So one thought I would like to throw out to you, we can use either Hazelwood or Risen at no cost to us if we do it on a weeknight. We are limited to a weeknight when they don't have something going on there, but there is typically an option and availability at one of those two spaces, is to rent either Hazelwood or Risden, and then using the budget that we're not spending on the venue to buy and bring in catering from a variety of our local restaurants. So for instance, perhaps we might bring appetizers from a couple different places. We bring dessert from a couple different places. We have different mains, almost like an around the world sort of taste of Newcastle at our volunteer appreciation. The one thing I don't quite have figured out with that plan is who would do the serving. Another option is to use something like Renton Technical College for catering, where you're paying for the food and the catering. It doesn't have the same sort of local appeal, but it is still relatively local.
I keep thinking about a buffet type where you don't really need necessarily people serving, but maybe the restaurant's there to make sure everything is still full, but people can serve themselves.
Having it, having it at a restaurant, even if restaurant personnel aren't serving, a restaurant's still gonna have all their same safety concerns. So they might not want me to get my fingers in there, they'd rather have somebody else.
I guess I'm thinking if restaurants come to, if we did the school, Risden, and we had tables set up and they just bring the food and lay it out, is there a restaurant that's capable of catering an event for, 125 people?
I mean, I think most do, right? Like when we did staff appreciation, like Chipotle would come and set up, they'd bring all their things, set everything up, keep the spoons, and then we served ourselves. So I think most restaurants would at least set up.
I guess I was thinking if we're trying to keep it local, we have,
But even like Tapatio or anyone else would still bring the food.
Let me throw out this inquiry, if we, so a lot of people are some of the volunteers are used to having it at some place like Resonate. If we opted for some place like Risden or Hazelwood, would there be lower interest because there's no adult beverages? Which I'm assuming we could not have at one of those places.
That is true. However, when it comes right down to it, very few people are actually buying alcohol when all is said and done and the bill is settled. Because if more people were buying alcohol, we would actually come closer to meeting our buyout. That's how most people who buy out Resonate and other restaurants are able to get to that buyout. And we do not come close. Very few people are actually buying, or at least that has been the case in the past 2 years.
I just want to clarify that everybody that does buy adult beverages pays for their own. They just tally that up, correct? Resonate does at the end of the night.
Yes, that is correct.
And then they
Yeah.
say, yes, this counts towards your $2,500.
Yes.
But then the rest of it, just the food,
Right.
only the food can be paid for by the city's budget. Just,
That's the food and the room rental.
I just want to make sure.
Yes,
We're
thank you
all
for clarifying
very-
that, yes.
Yes,
There
okay,
is-
great.
City of Newcastle is not
Great.
paying for adult beverages.
I was fairly sure I was clear on that point, but I wanted to leave no room for confusion for anybody else who might not be familiar with the policy that's out there. So, okay, so they add that all up and then they say, yes, this counts towards your $2,500 buyout, but that all comes out of anybody's pocket who wishes to have an adult beverage. Okay, great. Thank you for letting me clarify that.
Just gonna throw this out. I will give the golf course at Newcastle a call, and I'll talk to the general manager, and I'll ask, what can we get for $2,500? We do this event, this is what it brings, this is how many people, this is important to the city and our volunteers. What can the golf course provide? And they have an incredible catering business, and they have great conference rooms. I know they can facilitate it. They have bars, so I know they can serve alcohol. And I'll see. So if I were to go to them, could I say, we have a price tag of $2,500 that we could use?
No, you can say 2,000. I need to have a buffer, and I feel more comfortable
Okay.
with 2,000 or less.
What do you guys think? I mean, it's worth a try, right? Yeah. I think it would be a great attraction for people to hey, we're going to have this at the golf course in Newcastle this year.
Do we have a date?
That was my next question to the commission. So if there are no other comments about venue, so I will look at the third spaces document. I do expect that to be able to be shared with you in October. I will look at Aegis and their capacity. Someone mentioned the Y and their capacity. If there are specific restaurant recommendations that I should look into, please let me know. And I will also look at what the offerings are for buffet type services in our area. So the next question to you was the suggested timing. Typically it's done in November. Is there a suggested day of the week and week in November?
Does it need to be done before the end of December? Is that the fiscal year?
Our budget is good through 2024. So yes, the end of the calendar year.
So last year it was on a Monday, November 27th, and it was very well attended.
The 25th would be, Thanksgiving's really late this year.
Yeah, it's the 28th.
There's the 28th, so I would not recommend the 25th because people may be starting their travel.
I'm unavailable on the 25th. I have family in town.
How about the 18th?
That's, the 11th is Veterans Day, so that wouldn't be.
Looks pretty good. Should we give that a try?
If we had to dip into December, should we?
Well, I was about to ask, does it have to be on a Monday? The only reason we've done it on a Monday is because that was the most cost-effective buyout with Resonate.
I don't think it has to be on a Monday, but we could target like that week of November 18th and see.
So one thought I have about having something on a Monday is if you get it too close to the weekend, people make plans. But Mondays, they're like, the weekend's over, they're back to work. Oh, I get to go to a free dinner tonight? I think that may be one of the reasons we've had such good success doing it on Mondays.
I'm
Just a
not
thought.
available any other night of the week, so.
And you are a critical event planner, game planner.
Other than the Wednesdays where there's no CAC.
Yeah.
I'm not available on November 18th. It's Risden's PTA meeting.
So maybe that means Risden won't be available. Where do you guys meet? Just in the auditorium? Library?
At the conference room.
So Kim asked about December.
Or November 4th, is that too tight of a turnaround probably?
No, but I believe that's the night before election night, and
Oh, yeah,
typically
bad,
we've
no.
Yeah,
avoided
no.
that.
December 2nd?
I'm wondering if we should maybe pick a couple of dates
Yeah.
to give some flexibility to whatever venue arrangements we need to make.
So is Monday, the 18th still a possibility? Okay. What other dates?
I have December 2nd or the week of December 2nd on here.
Mhm.
And
That
I
would
I think
work.
having those 2 weeks, targeting the Mondays ideally, is enough for me to work with at this point.
So December 2nd, what was the other one?
November 18th,
Just those two?
those weeks,
The weeks.
targeting the Monday.
Okay.
That's enough for me at this point. I would like to charge with the commission with thinking about next year. And we did have this conversation a year ago. Perhaps rethinking how the volunteer appreciation dinner happens. Is it a dinner? Is it a lunch? Is it something that is inside in November, or is it something that we do outside at a different time of year? That's just rhetorical for right now, but given the challenges we're having in finding an appropriate venue, it is something to think about.
Okay. Do we have enough to work on for now? Seeing a lot of yeses. Anything else?
I guess I was gonna say, what are next steps, because it's coming up around the corner. So Amy, what do you need from us to?
My next step is to look at that third spaces document, to check into Aegis and the YMCA, which were specifically mentioned here tonight. However, as I mentioned earlier, if anybody has a restaurant recommendation that you think would be able to accommodate the number that we're looking at, please send that information my way. Nathan's going to reach out to his contacts at the golf club to see if they're willing to meet our budget. And then I have the 2 dates to work with. So the first thing is finding a venue. I have everything I need from the commission.
The Newport Hills Swim and Tennis Club has a venue that would be space-wise ideal for this event, and members can rent it for half off. So I know there's at least a couple, I'm a member, and there's at least a few people on this commission and on the council that are members. So that's a third option to consider. It has a kitchen, so that's also good in terms of bringing in catered food. But yeah, I would, we can talk more about that separately.
So do we need a subcommittee to help work on this? I'm a little nervous because I won't be at our October meeting and Connie will not be at the October meeting. You will still have a quorum, but there's a lot, sounds like there's some things that need to happen between now and then, or we just
The
communicate.
volunteers tribute. I will work with Amy, and then if someone else wants to back me up on that,
I
that
will
sounds
help.
great. Okay.
Okay. So Christian, Nathan will work with Amy to help drive this, and then Christian, you can bring whatever needs to come back. And in the meantime, if we need to, we can communicate via email if we have questions to each other. Okay. Thank you, Amy, with that. There is nobody in the audience, so we don't have any additional public comments. So our next meeting is October the 9th, and like I said, I will be absent. Vice Chair Flash will facilitate the meeting. And if there's nothing further, the time is 7:09, and I will call this meeting adjourned.